I can tell you that Jacob and I have very different stories of how this came about. um, Jacob came up to me after a Wednesday evening and directly asked me to do a workshop on active listening. And I said, yes, of course, I would love to do that. But it sounds like you have a lot of things to say about it too. So I'd love for you to be involved.
Interested there.
Oh, is that how that works? Oh, fascinating. I'll keep that in mind. um, So first, this is I work very somatically. And so, which means in your body, just as a quick translation. And I know that we're in public. And so there's some, like, we're not as comfortable as if we would be at home, like in our pajamas, lounging around. But as close as we can get to that as possible, um, I would like for that to happen. So I invite you to stand up and kind of just get comfortable in your body. And let's just take some deep breaths together, in through the nose and out through the mouth. Feel free to lower your eyelids or close your eyes just to really get into your body and get comfortable. Feel free to make noise. It's okay. And I invite you to use this kind of breathing throughout the workshop to just help you stay in your body. And now is the part where you're going to think that I'm really crazy, but I want us all to just give ourselves a good wiggle because that's like one of the best things you can do. Get into your bond. Hurts. And along these lines, I have a confession to make. I am neurodivergent. I really have trouble sitting still. And so if there's anybody else here who has trouble sitting still, I invite you to just be comfortable in your body at all times throughout the evening. Get up, move, do whatever you got to do, because that's way better than trying to sit and behave, honestly. So, with that, I would like to ask you if there's one word that you would like to bring into our time together and this space tonight. And you can either pop off popcorn style or you can raise your hand, whatever feels good. Oh, I love that.
Community.
I like that too.
Exploration.
Yes.
Playful.
Yes.
Co-operation. Harmony. Co-regulation.
Liza?
Wiggle.
I love it. Awesome. Oh, you guys brought your A game tonight. Wonderful. Well, make yourself comfortable, whether that is sitting or standing. Thank you very much for the introduction, Jacob. I never would have imagined the wonderful friendship that is unfolding, and I'm so happy for it. But I would like to introduce myself to those of you who don't know me. My name is Jessica Garver. I'm a somatic leadership coach. So what that means is that I work with leaders and teams to take them from survival mode into feeling safe in success. And I do that through nervous system regulation and emotional intelligence. And we go through 3 sort of phases or steps. The first one is moving into safety, and then power, and then creation. And so it's actually really fun work, and it's a lot like what we just did in these first 5 minutes. And I'm so excited to bring some of that here tonight. So active listening is co-regulation, and when it's done from a deeply grounded, centered place, it's one of the best medicines on earth. Has anybody experienced that about listening? About being listened to, I mean? Yeah, awesome. And so for anybody who hasn't, co-regulation is what you feel when you're with that person who makes you feel really calm and peaceful inside yourself. So this isn't really just a listening skills workshop. It's about relearning how to be in presence with ourselves, with each other, and without needing to fix, fill, or figure out. So you can follow along in the steps of our time tonight. There's going to be 5 parts. And so the first part is why and how does listening empower me? Because it could maybe seem at first like, okay, I'm listening to people, but like, what am I getting out of the deal? So we're going to talk about that. And then silence as a foundation, and then defining what is listening so that we're all on the same page about that. Maybe the most important part is actually listening to yourself. And then finally, we'll finish with crosstalk, which is the opposite of listening. Yeah. So as we were talking about a moment ago, I really believe that everyday listening is medicine, and it turns everyday moments into medicine. And it helps us to transform into the next dimension of consciousness. And so some things that happen when you slow down and really listen, you interrupt the spell of separation. What do I mean by that? Well, the wisdom traditions of the East tell us that we are really all one. Everything that exists in the universe is one. And so the spell of separation is when we get into a place where we feel like something is opposite to us, something is other than us. And that's what listening helps us to dispel. When you listen, you shift the field. You remind both you and the other person that we are not machines passing tasks. We are people crossing paths. And so this can happen with the person bagging your groceries, the woman on the counter on the customer service line, the guy fixing your internet. Presence dissolves the numbness that we often experience in our daily lives. Presence meaning listening. And yeah, it changes us more than anybody else, which is everyone, as we were just discussing about unity. So some of the other benefits of listening and how it empowers us is that it rewires the nervous system from survival into safety. That may sound pretty outlandish of a claim, but if you were being chased by a tiger, you would not be able to slow down and listen. And so when you're silent and you have attuned presence, it tells the body that you're not in danger anymore. And it also interrupts hypervigilance, which is kind of the default mode that we live in our society. It's not only a rewiring, but it also is a repair. So it helps us to stay with ourselves in moments of discomfort without fleeing or fixing or performing. It also builds trust and moves people. My former life, before I became a coach, I was a salesperson and a manager on the wholesale side of wine and spirits. And I definitely experienced this a lot in that. So whatever it is that you do, whatever your profession is, you're a teacher or a parent, a manager or a salesperson, studies tell us that top performers listen 45% of the time, which is about half. And it's crazy to think about our days in that way. Like if we go through our day, how much of the time did we spend listening versus talking? And it's not because people don't have much to say, these top performers who are listening 45% of the time. It's because listening helps, they know that listening helps people hear themselves. Active listening isn't just a communication skill, it's a core leadership skill. Leaders who listen well build trust, model presence, and create psychological safety. And I'm just going to let you sit with that for a moment. So as you might have guessed, filling the silence is not a skill. In fact, silence is actually very powerful in conversations, in coaching, and in negotiations. The person who can hold the pause often holds the power, not power over, but power with. As a manager, a trainer, and now a coach, I've found that the most effective learning and breakthroughs happen when someone hears themselves speak, when they arrive at their own aha. And silence helps that happen. Another huge benefit of listening is that it deepens intimacy in romantic relationships. And studies tell us that most conflict stems not from differences, but from not feeling heard. And so active listening dissolves power struggles by creating a safe space, creating a shared field where both people soften and reflect and connect. And when you listen with deep, grounded presence, your body receives the message, you're safe now. It shifts from that hypervigilance into regulation. Not only all of those things, but active listening strengthens you as well. As we've said, it sends the body the message that you're safe now. It helps you stay present with yourself and not others, not just others. It strengthens focus, emotional clarity, and self-regulation. And maybe the most cool, it activates brain regions that are tied to empathy and mindfulness. This is one of my favorite quotes, and this is how I feel about what listening does. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. So next, we're going to move on to the next part, which is silence as foundation.
If you talk all the time, you'll never hear what anybody else has to say. And therefore, all you'll have to talk about is your own conversation. The same is true for people who think all the time. That means, when I use the word think, talking to yourself. Subvocal conversation, the constant chit-chat of symbols and images and talk and words inside your skull. Now, if you do that all the time, you'll find that you've nothing to think about except thinking. And just as you have to stop talking to hear what others have to say, you have to stop thinking to find out what life is about.
Any guesses as to who that was speaking? Okay, Alan Watts is the guy. Good job. But yes, he's a contemporary of Ram Dass. So it sounds like the whole room knows who those people are, which is awesome. I will never forget the first time that I heard him say that. It totally rocked my world. So with that, to explore silence from a foundational place, I would like to invite you to do a kind of grounding meditation with me, if that's okay. And if you need to get more comfortable in your body in some way, I invite you to do that, getting up, moving around, whatever that is. So once you're comfortable, I just, whatever that looks like in your body, although feet flat on the floor is a great way to do it. And then having your spine straight and your arms falling down from your shoulders is another great way to help the body be comfortable. So we'll just start by allowing you to lower your eyelids or close your lids and just start to bring your attention to your breath. You don't need to change anything. You don't need to force anything. You can just notice that your breath is breathing you. And that this is one of the most profound ways that the universe supports you, that you are supported by the universe, is this breath breathing you. So with your next breath, notice the shape it takes as it fills your chest, and the shape it takes as it exits your body. Feeling it go deeper still with the next breath. Feeling it go into all the nooks and crannies, all of the fresh oxygen pouring into your body, renewing you and healing you. And ask yourself this strange question. Can I imagine the distance between my eyes? Can I imagine all of the atoms that are between my eyes? All of the space that is in each of those atoms compared to the matter. And knowing that all of that space in each of those atoms between my eyes is conscious, and it is love. Can I imagine the distance between my eyes and the center of my head? Can I imagine the distance between my forehead and my spine? Can I imagine the space that my body takes up in space? Allowing yourself to notice that the space holds up all of the matter that exists in the universe. Next, allow yourself to notice any sounds in our environment tonight. It might be something so close, like your heartbeat, or your breath, or the squeak of the chair, or the fan, or maybe the buzzing of electronics. It might be bigger noises. And as you notice all of those sounds, allow yourself to notice the silence that holds up those sounds, that makes them possible. That all of those sounds would not exist without the silence underneath them. And now bringing your attention to any activity that you can sense. First in yourself, which might be some of the same things as you noticed before. Your heartbeat, or your breath, or other people's breath, or other people's movements. And as you become aware of all of the activity that you can sense, allow yourself to notice the stillness that is underneath all of that activity, that makes it possible, that holds it up. And as you've gathered the awareness of this space and silence and stillness, that it's consciousness, that it's love, and noticing that you are that silence and that space and that stillness. And now come back to your body and this room. First, extending your attention 1 inch around the outside of your body, and then one foot. And mentally say to yourself, I'm safe, I'm secure, I can ask for anything that I need or want. And when you're ready, open your eyes. How did that feel? Everybody's very quiet now. Yeah, the difference is really striking. I will never forget the first silent retreat I went on when I was a part of a yoga group. I was working in the wine and spirits industry and at a pretty intense pace, which is kind of my norm. And before I went into it, I thought, oh my God, I really need a vacation. I maybe need 2 vacations, actually, one right after the other. And I did not really know what to expect out of the silent retreat. I had never done anything like that. And within like a day of the 4-day silent retreat, I realized that I did not need a vacation. I just needed to sit down and shut up for a little bit of time. It was amazing how restorative that was. And even before that, a little bit more of the story of my journey with listening, I guess, is the right way to say it. Before I ever even thought about leading a workshop on listening, I was trained in it, but not in the way you'd hope. I was the listener in my family before I could even talk. And that sounds poetic, but it wasn't. I became the emotional confidant for people whose emotions I couldn't possibly process. There were no boundaries and no choice. And over time, that early wiring became my default, holding space for others while completely abandoning myself. And that's why this work is very personal to me. Listening isn't just a skill. It's how we come home to ourselves. It's how we undo the places where we were never protected and finally become the safe place that we always needed. So when I talk about silence, I'm not talking about the kind of silence that erases people. I'm talking about the kind of silence that allows us to come back home to ourselves. And that's what this part of the workshop is about. And so what that silent retreat experience gave me was the ability to listen to silence itself, to check in with it, to feel, is this silence comfortable? Are people resting in it? Or are they gathering thoughts that just need a little more space to emerge? And I started to realize that when we rush to fill silence, we often miss what's quietly starting to form. A thought, a truth, a brave little string of words that's not ready to walk out yet. So now, when I hear silence, I don't assume that it's emptiness. I ask, what might be happening inside this quiet? And so, are you guys ready for another activity? One of the things that I learned also in the silent retreat, because there was like 12 of us who were in like a large house and we had to coordinate navigating meals and like walks and all the things. And so I asked the women, like, how are we supposed to do that without communicating? And they said, and you are not going to believe this, and I don't expect you to, but we're going to try it out to see how it works. They said, whenever you feel like you need to say something to someone, this is what you do. And like I said, I don't expect you to believe this without trying it, but even if you have something complex that you would like to say, communicate to somebody, it's amazing how you can actually do that with just that. So I'm going to ask you to get up and cross the room if you would like, just so you can move your body a little bit more, and find somebody to practice this with for the next few minutes. I know it's a brave thing that you're doing, but I think there are a lot of friends in the room, so feel free to choose someone who is a friend. Yes. Jacopo has chosen.
Why? Yeah. Sure.
So as you're experimenting with this, here are some things to feel as you are doing it. Feel free to stay in this as long as you want, but you are also welcome to move around now if you are ready. As I said, stay as long as you like. You just might want to sit in chairs to do it now. Okay. I'm gonna reel you back in, guys. I love that you're communicating with one another, but let's sit down and become present for the next part. Okay. So I'm curious, what did you discover did you discover anything surprising as you tried that you would like to share? There's no obligation to share, obviously.
Jules and I very quickly created inside jokes. Simple, just.
That seems totally on brand for Lisa. Anybody else? Oh, awesome. You first?
Sure. I was explaining to you, grandkid, like in my head, I just felt two grindstones just turning where it's just, it's just so hard for me to not want to know more, you know. But then I was saying, but then I was trying to reflect on like situations where I am quiet with someone for extended periods of times, and like we think like my wife or brother, you know, or my parents, where we could just be in the same place for a long time, where it's very quiet and calm stuff. That just kind of helped me work through it.
Yeah, it is. That curiosity is double-sided in my experience. And Marie?
For me, it was a deep recognition and love. It was definitely the level of safety, the seal, something seeing the mirror.
That's super cool. Yvonne?
We're just such love away, but it's just such a joy.
I love that. Well, I have, yes, lots of love for both of you, so I love that. So, oh, hey, yes.
For me, one of the things I've done in the past in like throwing together workshops is find someone and stare into their eyes for 2 minutes. They'll walk around the room, find someone staring in their eyes, and for me that's like, no. It's like so much. It almost feels like, you know, slightly artistic. It's just like too much. So
Yeah.
So this was challenging, and I picked just the right person. Someone very gentle and soft and present, and a lot. I did get a chance to be there, reach down and look away when I needed, and breathe and get in my body. And thank you, Julie.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being willing to go on that journey. That's, yeah. Yes, you should always, I mean, like if I ask you to do anything tonight that you're not comfortable with, you just do whatever's right for you. Just want to let you off the hook. What I hope that you may have also discovered is that silence isn't empty, it's alive. It's the first and most essential layer of listening. So now we're at part 3. What is listening? And let's explore what listening actually is and how it goes far beyond just hearing words. So this is an image that I was so stoked to find. This is what it feels like to me when I try that silent communication that we just experimented with. It is also an image representation of this, that energy carries information. And sometimes we listen not with our ears, but with our bodies. And that's why I want you to remain as comfortable in your body at all times tonight as possible. So next, we're going to explore the differences between wise listening versus reactive listening, because there are different kinds, right? So reactive listening is from a place of urgency and ego or self-protection. It's often fast and shallow and unconscious and driven by the need to relieve discomfort, resolve uncertainty, or regain control. Reactive listening happens when we are internally activated, which means when our nervous system is aroused and our defenses are up, or if we're waiting to speak instead of receiving, making meaning too quickly, assuming, judging, fixing, or advising, or listening through our own projections, fears, or agenda. And next, wise listening, which is the same as active listening, in case you're wondering. Listening from a grounded, open, and regulated presence. And regulated, just for some context, means calm, not hypervigilant, means that your breath is even and you feel centered and grounded. So it's the listening of trees. I don't know if you've ever tried being listened to by a tree, but it's pretty awesome in case you want to give it a go. Elders, which some of mine are, which are here tonight, who I very much appreciate. It's the kind of listening that allows people to hear themselves more clearly in your presence. And wise listening happens when we are attuned to our own bodies and breath as we listen, which is one of the reasons why we've been doing that so much tonight. And when we welcome pauses and silence as fertile space. And when we let the speaker unfold in real time without steering or assuming. And most of all, it's about staying curious, even when it's uncomfortable or unclear. And then maybe one of the coolest and subtle and layered things that I learned about listening in my training as a coach was be the window and not the light. And you might be wondering, what the heck does that mean? And you'd be fair. It's fair for you to wonder that. One of the most powerful pieces of my healing has been realizing that I don't have to be the light in the room. I don't have to fix. I don't have to solve or brighten or carry. I can just let somebody else's light come through. And for somebody like me, who grew up being the one who held it all, that shift has been redemptive. It gave me back my energy, my boundaries, and my sense of self. It's also what has made me a better listener and a leader and a coach. So when I talk about listening, I'm not talking about passivity. I'm talking about presence. Not disappearing, but becoming transparent enough that someone else can see themselves more clearly. And one of the most powerful pieces of redemption in my journey has been stepping into listening as my own superpower. So you might have gathered that you don't have to be the answer. You just have to be the opening through which somebody else's truth becomes visible. Wise listening isn't about performing insight or offering brilliance. It's about transparency and becoming the kind of presence that lets the speaker access their own light more clearly, like clean glass that doesn't distort. And so you might be wondering, like, how does this work one-on-one versus in a group? So we're going to go over a few of those things. First of all, the listener's full attention is on the speaker's words, tone, body language, and emotional undercurrent. And this is different for men and women because generally we women respond instantly. And this is just a difference in our physiology. It's something that we can appreciate, a difference that we can appreciate about each other, whereas men take around 20 seconds to respond because mostly they're weighing what their response is more than we do as women. And when we can take that into account, we can listen to each other better. So really what it means is that we women need to slow down a little bit. So when you are active listening one-on-one, one of the primary things is that eye contact signals presence without pressure. And reflective responses like, it sounds like, or what I'm hearing is, are also great indications to the other person that you're actively listening to them. Silence and stillness that give the space for the speaker to unfold. And thank you for doing that for me tonight, by the way, guys. I am not as polished at this as I would like to be, but I appreciate your patience with me. So not rushing to fill the space or give advice is another indication of active listening. And this may seem disconnected, but I promise it's not. Tracking your own internal reactions, which is called interoception, without acting on them immediately. And so then the way it looks in group settings is no crosstalk, which we're going to go into great detail about later. But basically, it is don't speak directly to or about what others have shared unless invited. So for those of us who like to come into the ceremony circles, that's one of the things that struck me right away. Here is these kinds of things that just happen naturally in the ceremony circles. So no fixing, advising, or piggybacking on somebody else's story. Using I statements when it's your turn to speak. Listening with your body and not just your mind. And trusting the silence between the shares. And this lets the group regulate itself rather than stepping in to soothe discomfort. So this part is going to be a choose your own adventure scenario. Either you can raise your hand and we can all hear each other, or if you would prefer to pair off with somebody. But the activity is to think of a time when somebody really listened to you and what made it feel that way.
Yeah, just today, my husband and I both 38 years, so that's practice. Our kitty died on Saturday, and it was terrible timing, terrible and divine timing. And so we've been working with that, and he's part of Empathy Center, and it's all about this. And the way they do it and we apply it is you can have 4 minutes to talk or less, uninterrupted. The other person reflects back what they hear you saying until you say, yeah, that's it, you got it, I feel heard. So, emotions were high this morning. And I thought, is it important enough to deal with it, or can I just slide by? It's not that big, but now we have to do it. And so, and part was like kind of critical of him and also critical of myself. But he did a really good job of reflecting back, paraphrasing what he heard me say.
And how did that, you said you were in a really emotional place, so what was, if you don't mind sharing, your before and after that listening experience?
Yeah, and I mean, I said it was a real rush. I didn't think I was that emotional, but when we got into it, I'm like, yeah, it is real. You do need to deal with this. And before there's been, attention. It's been like, my day started out really poorly, and I'm afraid my day is going to continue like that unless we work through this. And after we spoke, felt heard, and he spoke to me, and we'll reflect it back to him. It was like, it was just like, okay, that's better. I mean, there's things we need to learn and remember, but it was a huge relief for both of us.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's so beautiful.
What was that?
Is there anybody else who would be willing to share about an experience of being really listened to and how it made them feel? Judith.
Right, I was here at District216 when we had an integration circle here a couple of weeks ago. And I spoke about my journey, and I just felt such love and support emanating from the whole group as we shared, many of us shared our journeys, and they were all so positive. And so there was just an outpouring of love. It was beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
I'm surprised to hear that. It's one of my favorite things about District 216. Is there someone else who would be willing to share? Awesome, Josh.
I'll shoot. This is a small story. I remember I was in high school, and the blue struggle to get some, learning a math concept. And I remember the person helping me out, and it's that feeling you feel, right? It's like a vibration kind of feeling that in your chest. I could feel that, and I just wasn't getting some. Yeah. Just the way that they described it, or when they were talking to me, or doing it, just really felt like, I don't know, that you're actually listening to what I was having issues. If that makes sense.
And so what was, how were you feeling before that? And what was the difference in how you felt after they heard you?
So, yeah, I was feeling very frustrated. I couldn't understand what was going on there. And then after they found out, I felt like calm, much better, relaxed. I got the concept. It's just that, and that feeling comes up, in my life multiple times, like throughout. It's good. I love that feeling.
It is a great feeling. Thank you so much for sharing. Yes.
Yeah. That's that story. Imagine.
When I was a young adult, I came from another country, and I come from a Roach family, which was absolute chaos for 2 decades. And so when I was a young adult, I ended up sitting in a circle, and it was called like the Way of the Castle. And so the elders would speak, and it was a very big dysfunctional family. But it was in a school setting, so I felt very much at home because I come from chaos, dysfunction. And at some point, I was invited to sit in the middle and to listen to what people had to say. So the exercise was people would tell you what they thought of you, and you couldn't respond. And some people were in trouble, and they had to hear that they were in trouble. And for the first time in my life, I was gifted with a lot of praise and a lot of recognition of the work that I had done in making peace in the group. And it was the first time that I felt like I was heard, seen, and understood.
Wow.
And it was an ignition. It was the first time it was ignited where I was in relationship with soul.
Wow.
Because before that, I had never had that gift to be heard, seen, and acknowledged. And it was through listening. So for me, it was very hard to listen what was spoken to me. Right? And I was trained to speak of others and, reflect what others would say. But I never had that reflection myself. So when I saw someone beside, it's just like traveling back to where I was. And I remember being in this zafu that was terrorizing, to just sit my ass and being seen because there was a lot of elders and professors and peers and people that I really had done a lot of work already with in terms of understanding the language, psychology, somatic experiencing and all that. So it was magical.
Wow, that is a really high pressure way to experience that.
It was that, I think considering the dissonance, it was probably what need to, that's the only way I would hear it. And that's why they put me on that movie.
Wow.
And I think there were smart people, they were well-educated people, and they knew what they were doing. So, yeah.
I have this hunch, to tell me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like that was maybe a very clear mark in your life of like before and after. Would you be willing to say more about what your experience was after that point? Like how you experienced yourself and listening and other people?
Well, I think I just became much more self-aware and much more confident as well in terms of who I was as an individual. I was seen for something else that I had yet defined for myself, if you will. And so it was kind of like a preliminary process of coexisting with myself, right, in a very intimate way. And so, yeah. So and it's called The Way of the Castle. It's actually a guy from Ohio, who wrote that, and he's gone worldwide. And so it was in a school setting, and that's what they were. Every morning we would greet in circle and then over DJ. Yeah, so, yeah.
That's a really amazing story. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Is there anybody else who would like to share? Okay. Well, we'll move on then. So, and all of your stories lead beautifully into this next section, which is listening to yourself. So we just mentioned interoception and then self-attunement, its partner. As we're learning tonight, active listening is not just about the other person. It begins here, with the ability to sense what's happening in your own internal world as you listen. And so I wanted to just put up a very layman's version of what interoception is. And so it's your body's ability to feel itself from the inside out, like sensing your heartbeat, your breath, or a sudden gut clench before your mind can explain it. It helps you stay anchored in your experience when you're with others and notice subtle internal shifts and regulate your emotions in real time. It's how you build embodied presence, attunement, and emotional resilience. And I'm so excited and honored that the person who started to teach me this is in the room tonight, Anne-Marie. She also she facilitated my first psychedelic journey and is a very talented and gifted therapist. And I'm so grateful to have in my life and here tonight. So, the tears and then the laughter. As I was thinking about all of this, I realized that I didn't start. I'm sorry, let me come back here. So as a kid who grew up on Star Trek Next Generation, the lines of the opening sequence are burned into my brain. Space, the final frontier. But as I started healing, I began to realize it's not outer space that's the final frontier. For me, The most mysterious and uncharted territory was inside. The sensations, instincts, and signals that I had spent a lifetime overriding. Interoception gave me a map back. It taught me how to feel the difference between a yes and a no in my body, between fear and truth, between collapsing into someone else's energy and staying anchored in my own. And I still believe your inner world is the final frontier. It's what allows you to not just hear others, but to hear yourself first. Also, the Star Trek is something that I've discovered that Jacob and I share a love for.
Share our role playing Lose Your Westers.
Yeah.
You can know.
I'm glad because I just did. So now we're going to try an interoception experiment. If you're ready to go with me on another fun activity, I am going to ask you to close your eyes or lower your lids for a moment and just poke around inside yourself and feel for an emotion that feels powerful in this moment. And so some of the 5 big categories of emotions are joy, anger, sadness, fear, and then creativity, which can also be sexual feelings. It's the same thing, just can be directed in 2 different ways. So within those 5, there's actually many, many permutations, but just wanted to give you a handle on some things to as you explore your final frontier of your inner world. And so in a conversation with yourself, just allow yourself to describe it more fully with whatever words come to you. And while you're exploring your inner world, ask yourself if there are any other emotions, needs, or desires that want to be noticed. So some of the other, as you're continuing, I'll just, and if anybody decided to open their eyes, which is totally fine, some of the things, for instance, within the fearful category are anxious, insecure, weak, rejected, threatened. Some of the other permutations of happy are playful, content, interested, proud, accepted, powerful, peaceful, trusting, optimistic. And feel free if you would like, whatever feels good to you. I have up here the feelings wheel. I'm sorry, part of it's cut off. And as I said, we can send this to you in the by request to the handout that we will email to you. But the feelings wheel is amazing. And it is actually a website. Helpfully, the web domain is thefeelingswheel.com. And this is an incredible tool for navigating interoception within yourself. Sometimes it's just helpful to read through it, and you may not even know that you're feeling something, but there's a word that will pop out. So I highly recommend making it one of the favorites on your browser. Okay, so I love lizards and snakes and everything in that family, and when I found this photo, I thought it was such a perfect image of being listened to. So we all need to be listened to by someone else. And while there's lots of tools that we've laid the foundation for so far, silence and interoception, the need to be listened to in your life by another person, a pet, a therapist, a mentor. I cannot emphasize how important that is, like how much of a primal need that is. It's something that we're all worthy of and something that we all need. Because if nobody's ever made space for your inner world, how would you know how to do it for somebody else? And that kind of listening, especially to ourselves, takes both internal and external work, especially if you grew up in an environment where your survival depended on being attuned to others. If you never had the experience of being deeply listened to or attuned to as a child, it can feel almost impossible to believe that you deserve it now, that you're allowed to be held in that way. And if that resonates with you, please hear these two things. As I said, listening is a primal human need, and you are worthy of having that need met. The external work, part of the work, is finding someone you trust, someone who feels safe to offer you that kind of listening. And my hope is that the guidelines in this workshop will help you to recognize those people in your life and become one of them too. So, if you'd be willing to share again, would you prefer to pair off and talk about this just in pairs, to talk about what emotions you were noticing as you were practicing interoception? I know it's kind of personal, so that might work better than doing like raising of hands. Anybody want to chime in? Okay, we're going to go with that. Find a buddy, somebody who you feel safe with, and just take a few minutes to share what emotions you were noticing as you were practicing. Okay, I'm so happy that this is going so well, but if you could just, you do it.
All right, we're going to land the plane. We're going to land the plane. Bring it in for a landing.
Okay. Good job, everyone. I'm so stoked that you're, yeah. So we're going to move on to part 5, crosstalk, which is the opposite of listening. And
just crosstalk.
Well, it's a little different, but yeah. So we're going to go through some points of what crosstalk means, because it sort of can just be like an undefined phrase, and I don't want to leave it that way. I want us all to be clear about that now that we understand what listening is. So one of the things that is crosstalk is interrupting mid-flow, which is jumping in while the person is still speaking. So according to that definition, yes, we just crosstalked you. Sorry about that. So even if your response is enthusiastic, like, oh, wow, or same, it can hijack the emotional thread. And even though that often comes from excitement or resonance, the thing is that it disrupts the speaker's nervous system rhythm and breaks the internal unfolding process. So, and I'm sure that we have all had these happen to ourselves, and we may have wondered, like, why did that feel not good? Like, that should have felt fine, but there's something in us that knows. So another one is interpretation or analysis, and it can sound like you're probably just feeling that way because of X, Y, and Z. Or it can be, oh, that seems like you're in a classic fight or fight response. And while those are probably well-meaning, it still pulls the speaker out of their own meaning-making and subtly shifts them into your lens. So this is a really hard one. This might be the hardest one as far as like not doing it. Fixing or advice giving. Oh, you should definitely try this. I think that would help you. Or have you ever thought about this? Which could seem like it's helpful, but it implies their current state needs fixing or bypassing, especially if it's offered uninvited. And you might be wondering, like, uninvited, how does that work? So one of the tools that we learned in coaching is that because coaching, by definition, we're not allowed to give advice. That's part of the International Coaching Federation standards. So if we feel that we want to offer something to someone we're coaching, we ask, would you be open to a suggestion? And so that is, that's a way you can check in with the person that doesn't disrupt them. And if they are feeling like, oh yeah, that would be great, then they'll tell you. And if not, then you just allow them to continue speaking. This one is very much something that I have struggled with, relating that redirects. Oh, that happened to me too. Or, oh, this reminds me of this thing I read or this podcast. And it can feel like connection, but it moves the energy away from the speaker's unfolding process and towards the responder's content. So more importantly, why do we crosstalk? Because being with somebody's raw emotion can feel deeply uncomfortable. And it's totally reasonable to feel uncomfortable with that. And it's very human and very compassion driven. We feel their pain and we want it to go away fast. Or we think that if we say the right thing, we'll fix it. Or we confuse presence with performance. But here's what's often underneath it. We're afraid of negative or uncomfortable emotions. And this is very much a product of the Western culture that we live in. We don't really have a safe space for grief or for anger fear has transmuted into like the biggest anxiety epidemic of our time. So it's very clear that we don't know how to be with uncomfortable emotions. And yeah, a lot of compassion for ourselves in that. Another one is the myth that we're responsible for fixing other people's pain, which I'm guessing that a lot of you in the room tonight might feel that way. And I hope that you feel let off the hook from that in what we've talked about tonight. Also, the need to feel helpful or good in the moment is another thing that's underneath why we crosstalk and how uncomfortable it can be to be with negative emotions. This is one of the biggest ones, our own unhealed wounds that get stirred by somebody else's sadness or anger or fear. And interestingly enough, interoception is one of the most powerful tools to mitigate that because it helps us to know, oh, that's mine. That's mine. That's not the other person. That's mine. So I'm not just going to leave you hanging with all these reasons why. Let's go over some tools for how to be with uncomfortable emotions. And I think the thing that is why they're scary, why we don't have a place for them in our culture is because we're afraid of being overwhelmed by them. Sadness can feel like, oh my God, maybe I will get depressed and maybe I will just stay there and I won't know how to get out. Anger can feel all-consuming. And I think that we all, after having gone through the pandemic, have a pretty good idea of the loop of anxiety and how we can get stuck in that. So, some tools for how to be with uncomfortable emotions in yourself first. You name it without judgment. And that is something that you do. It's easier in meditation because it helps put some distance between you and that feeling. And you can say, oh, look at that. I'm feeling fear or I'm feeling sadness. And you know that you are not that fear and you are not that sadness. And so it could look like I'm feeling anxious versus I shouldn't be feeling this way. This is really hard. You stay with it. You don't try to push it away. And you don't make up a story about it. You just allow it to be. oh, I don't have to have a reason. I don't have to explain it or myself. I can just be with the sensation. This one is a really powerful thing that can be hard to do, but it is, as you probably learned when you did our interoception exercise, when you tuned into what emotion you were feeling in your body. So you do that with negative emotions. Figure out where it lives. Where are all the places that you feel it? And just start to be with that. Notice if it has a weight or a shape or a texture. And that is a really powerful tool. Another really big thing is to not be in opposition to it, to not be pushing it away. And you can do that with your breath. You can send your breath into the negative emotion, and which we all know signals safety to our nervous system. That same kind of dynamic where when we find it in our body and like there's a part of us that doesn't want to feel it, if we can soften the body around it instead of trying to push it away or brace our body, it really does help. And the places where it shows up especially is your jaw and your belly and your shoulders, which is not going to be a surprise to any of you. This is probably the coolest and most powerful tool. Is you use that interoception thing that we did, and then you ask the emotion, what does it need? And what does it want from you? Which ends up often being like just relating to a younger version of ourselves, usually the range of like 2 to 5 years old. And so if you can visualize that when you're feeling that emotion that you want to push away, it helps me anyway, have compassion for that small self, that small younger self. So, tools that we can use to be with uncomfortable emotions in other people are holding the space and not needing to fix. Resisting the urge to jump in with advice or solutions or silver linings. Often some of the things that I have, I don't know, when somebody tries to tell me, oh, it could always be worse, I never feel better. I don't know about you. So validating without minimizing, and just to break that down into like a simple thing, it can look like, oh, I can understand that you're sad. I feel that you're sad. And it's essentially like, you don't need them to explain it. You don't need them to justify it. It's just like, oh, you feel that way. That's totally acceptable. And some ways that you can indicate that are saying, oh, that sounds painful, or I'm here with you, instead of, well, what we just discussed. Or you'll be fine. And as we've learned tonight, we can let silence do the work, because often that silent, very alive presence is actually the most powerful response. So this is another one, staying rooted in your body, which I think we've explored a lot tonight, and I hope that you have, I hope that our activities and breathing have helped you do that throughout the evening. So it helps you to keep contact with your breath and grounding so that you don't absorb somebody else's energy or emotion or override their emotional state. Also, don't make it about you. Even if you relate, don't shift the focus by sharing your own story unless they ask. So, next, a very important tool, how to listen without fixing. And so we're going to do an activity. We're going to try that together. If you could pair off and maybe find a new person this time, get up and move across the room, wiggle your body a little. I know it's getting late and it's a little warm, so.
Yeah, no busters.
Yeah, right? Leia, Princess Leia.
Yeah.
Okay. Come on. Oh no, I got lost. Sorry, I got lost. So first you find your person. Then one person shares a difficult emotion that they've recently felt, like so in the neighborhood of fear, anger, sadness. And the other person just listens. No fixing, no advice, just soft presence. And then you switch. Do you want me to put it on a timer of like a few minutes to do the switch? Okay, you got it. Actually, can you do that on your phone? Okay. Jacob's going to moderate the time.
Sorry. I was
Good. Good. She was the is
Here? Yeah. I didn't realize it was. Oh, it's just tomorrow. I thought those were 1 a.m. Yeah, still tomorrow. I miss thunderstorms so much from living up in the Midwest. If we actually have one, could be
oh, switch.
All right, ready?
Yeah. Here. Yeah, like 3 weeks. Normally, it was like 2.
At your house or here?
One's here. Mid-year. What was it bet?
It doesn't necessarily like. I mean, we have a lot of likely burgers that are in Denver Rex. That's right.
To base. You know, they have for like least an hour. 2 to 3 a.m. 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. Yeah, middle of the night, just like this first tropical. Woke up and all the cars were dirty again. So yeah, where was that Koa?
He was pressed to his lady involved.
Did you meet Liam?
No, that is so sweet.
The energy is our in my friend with our living, and we he referred to them in my sisterly because it looks so the move.
Okay. Well, the minute has happened, but you're welcome to share for a few more minutes if you'd like. So, as you've learned tonight, the first act of leadership is listening. And you don't have to have a title to lead. Leadership is actually the ability to regulate yourself so that others can co-regulate around you, which is something that Jacob models so beautifully for us. And deep listening is emotional leadership. It models presence in the face of uncertainty, emotion, and discomfort. In families and organizations and movements, this is what creates trust. So I just want to thank you all for spending your time here with me tonight and for the drive. And thank you. Thank you so much.